All right, so we are moving into our next lesson where we're going to be talking about powers of powers. The objective in this lesson is that you understand and you can apply the power of a power property. You should be able to apply the power of a product property as well as the power of a quotient property. All of these are going to help us to simplify our expressions. So, our question that I want you to think about during this lesson is how can we use properties of exponents to simplify expressions that involve powers of powers, products, and quotients. So I want you to think about that. And by the end of this lesson, you should have the answer to that. So our vocabulary terms for this lesson is going to be power of a power property. And what that means is that when we raise a power to another power, so what we have here, a to the power of m being raised to the power of n, you are simply going to multiply those powers. When we talk about a power of a product property, what we are saying is that when we see that there is multiplication within a parentheses, and there is a power outside of that, we are going to distribute. That means we're going to issue out the exponent to each of the variables or the quantities inside of the parentheses. So in this case, we have a times b to the power of m. So we're going to take that m and give it to the A as well as to the B. That is going to be the power for A and B. So when we look at it after we apply the exponent, we should have A to the power of M. We are still multiplying by B, and then we're going to raise that to the power of M as well. In terms of our power of a quotient property, what we're saying is that when we are looking at division, so when we have a quotient that is raised to a power, we're going to apply the exponent to both the numerator as well as the denominator. So in this case, we are going to say a to the power of m, and that is going to be over b to the power of m as well. So the power of a power property, just to explain what that is, it just simplifies the expression with the power raised to another power. So what we do again is we'll multiply the exponents. And so I have an example here. So if we wanted to simplify x to the power of 3 multiplied by the power of 4, then what we would do is we're going to apply the property by taking x to the power of 3, and then we're going to multiply it by 4. So here's what it would look like after we do that. And then when we simplify that, we now have x to the power of 12 because we multiplied 3 times 4 for us to get 12. So your answer would be for this expression, x to the power, I didn't lock it. X to the, give me a second. There we go. All right, so x to the power of 3 to the power of 4, remember we're just multiplying that, that becomes x to the power of 12. So the next one is the power of the product property. So when we have a product, we're multiplying terms. So in this case, we have 2 times x, and it is being raised to a power. What we're going to do is distribute the exponent to each of the factors. So we're going to say 2 to the power of 3, which we have here. And we're also going to say times x to the power of 3, which we have there. And then you simplify each of those terms separately. So 2 to the power of 3 gives us 8, and x to the power of 3 gives us x to the power of 3. That will stay the same. So your answer, when we look at this, 2 times x to the power of 3 is going to be the same thing as 8 times x to the power of 3. So we also can do the same thing when we talk about a power of a quotient property. What it does is helps us to generate equivalent expressions. And so we want to be able to understand as well as reinforce each of the properties. And we're going to generate equivalent expressions throughout the examples that we look at. So hopefully you'll be able to understand what we're doing when we're looking at a power of a power. So again, we're just going to take our power and multiply it by the power that we see outside. So this is going to be 8 to the power of 3 times 4. That is going to give us x to the power of 3 times 4. That is going to give us x to the power of 12. And then we see in terms of the power of a product. So remember, when we see that we are multiplying within parentheses and we have a power outside, you are going to distribute it to each of the factors that are inside. So that is the same thing as saying 3 to the power of 2 times a to the power of 2. And what we end up with is 3 to the power of 2 becomes 9. and a to the power of 2 would stay a to the power of 2. All right. And then in terms of the power of a quotient, so remember we're talking about dividing. It's inside of the parentheses. We have a power outside. So what that means is we are going to issue that power to each of the factors inside each of the terms that are inside of the parentheses. So what we would have is a divided by 2 to the power of 3 is the same thing as us saying a to the power of 3. And we're going to divide that by 2 to the power of 3, which gives us 8. So in summary, we're hoping that you'll master these different properties. Remember that it's going to help us to simplify complex expressions that we look at in terms of when we're working with exponents. So remember that if we are talking about a power of a power, that means that we're multiplying exponents. If we're talking about a power of a product, that means that we are distributing the exponents across all factors. So that's similar to what we had up here. And then if we are talking about a power of a quotient, it's applying the exponent to both the numerator and the denominator, which is what we saw here. So let's look at some examples to see what it looks like.